Well, welcome back for a special edition of the Final Boss Podcast. And I know you're wondering, uh, didn't he just get off the from one episode? Yes, I did. But in a few short minutes, I'm turning the big 50. That's right. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 50. 0, 0, 0. And I came back to do a special show because I'm turning 50. And under this momentous occasion, I sought and had the idea to have a special podcast on reflection. On reflection. And before we get into it, I just like to say, if you're tuning in right now, thank you. If my smarts are on, thank you. If you're watching and seeing the show for the very, very first time, thank you. Um, I would not be doing myself a proper service if I didn't tell you already, even though this is a special edition. This is episode number 62. A veteran's journey is what I'm calling it because I am a veteran, if you didn't know that. I would be talking about another veteran, although I could, but I'm talking about me. This episode is special to me because I just turned 50. I just turned 50. And listen, man. Let me do that again. To be 50, I've been alive for 5 decades. 5 decades. There was a time, well, before I get into that, like I said, I can't, even though this is a special edition, I have to treat it like all my other shows. So, with that being said, go like, share, and subscribe, and send me some stars. It's my birthday. Go do that. Like, share, subscribe, and send me some stars. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and I'm missing one, StreamYard. We're on all those platforms. Soon to be on Spotify. No, we are on Spotify. I apologize. We're on Spotify. Soon to be on Apple and soon to be on SoundCloud. So, like, share, subscribe. Listen, go get you some merch. The merch store is available. Go get you some merch. Follow the movement. Get you some merch that's a part of the movement at www.thefinalbosspodcast, one word, the Final Boss Podcast, one word.com, and go get you some merch. Support the merch, man. Support the movement. And we definitely would appreciate it. So go get you some merch and support the movement. Also, subscribe to all the channels and all the social media and all that good stuff, right? I just turned 50 years old, man. 50. So, um, with that, like every episode, because I'm not going to treat this episode any different, you have what I like to call my brass tacks. It's a way of me having an introduction into the tonight's show, and it's based off of a quote, an inspirational quote, positive quote, quote of business, whatever. But tonight we're pulling from the inspirational quotes hat, and it's about turning 50. All right. Here's my brass tacks for tonight on this special edition, birthday edition. At 50, you have a life full of experiences to guide your future. Turning 50 means you have half a century of stories to tell. Age is simply the number of years the world has been enjoying you. And the best part of life begins at 50 with all the wisdom of the past. So, with that being said, we're going to get right into it, man. Life at 50. So, this isn't, like I said before, man, and thank for those who are just coming on. This isn't your typical episode. This episode is about reflecting and an appreciation. I just turned a big 50. So instead of hitting you guys with word salad, strategies, and tactics, this episode is about personal reflection. Personal reflection. And for those who don't know, I'm a Washingtonian. I'm a military brat. I come from a military family that is generations deep, having served in the military and several wars, several World War II, Vietnam, Korean War, Desert Storm, and the 3 tours that I did in Afghanistan and Iraq. But my story begins. I was born in Germany, right? Born in Germany to 2 loving parents. Pops was in the military. He was in the army, and from there we went to New York. From New York to DC. And growing up in Washington D.C., especially in the '80s, growing up in the '80s wasn't a fairy tale, right? Drugs, drug dealing, gangsters were glorified. It wasn't. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were drugs, violence, and a volatile home life. Home life was volatile. It was a tough environment. I saw things that no child should have ever witnessed. I remember a very young age, man. I think I was probably like 9. We went over to the carnival that used to be over there by the DC Armory, and it was my pops, my mom, uh, myself, and I was my 2 other brothers too. They were young though, very young. And while we were leaving, I never forget it. I never forget it. Um, there was a shooting in the parking lot. A shooting in the parking lot, and for all intents and purposes, this is for entertainment purposes only. A Somebody was, if you could, yeah, and it happened right in front of me. Like I'm laying on the ground, I look right in front of me. That person was yeah, no more. And it was matter, be matter everywhere. And I saw it. Crazy, scary stuff. At 9 years old. That was one of many occurrences that I witnessed growing up in DC in the 80s. That was just the beginning. That was the first. And I've seen a lot, seen a lot, especially as a child. But these things shaped me profoundly. They forged a level of resilience that would later on prove to be invaluable. Those lessons were invaluable. Home life, invaluable. The things that I had to do to survive, to be strong, to be a black male growing up in what was then considered not really the hood, but back then in the 80s, everywhere was the hood, unless you grew up uptown by Georgetown or what's that area? Mass Ave and like way uptown. Everywhere else was the hood. Because if you could walk out the house, even if you're in the suburbs and you could throw a rock, that rock is going to land in somebody's hood. So it was all hood. But those lessons were invaluable. Left scars. Scars. The scars don't go away. The trauma, although you can seek help and talk about your traumas, talk about the things you've seen, talk about the things you witnessed, they don't really go away. They're scars. And scars heal, right? I've seen I've seen a lot of and I'm trying to be frank, which is really hard for me because I really don't talk frank a lot. So it's it's kind of difficult. And it seemed like I'm having some difficulty. That's what it is. Trying to gather my thoughts and put it in plain speak. Um, but I've seen a lot of the violence, more drugs than you can shake a pharmacy at. Been in that life, been a part of it, seeing it. It was it was more than what a normal child should see. Um, what in the world was that? Somebody hitting me up or something? I don't know what that was. Okay, that was weird. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I know what it is. Give me a second. Boom, I'm live. Oh, thank you, everyone. People wishing me happy birthday. Yeah, back to what I'm saying. So, um, growing up in that environment, no child should ever have to grow up like that. Those experiences instilled in me the importance of family, having close friends, understanding a good core of what's right and what's wrong and what's survival and the things that people would do for survival. Um, you it's a different world. It's a different world out there, and a lot of people never experienced it, never seen it, probably don't even believe that it existed because people just close a blind eye to a lot of different things. So um, I learned a lot of lessons, self reliance. I grew up fast. I grew up really, really fast. Um, Having to help my mother and we and my younger brothers. I grew up fast. I grew up really fast. Became very resourceful. I quickly learned quickly learned the needs of the community. And this is where my entrepreneurship comes from. I was always able to see the community or see things from a broader scope and have a clear understanding of what was needed or what people needed. And that's one of my superpowers. Yes, sir. Sensei, you're right. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Amen, brother. Amen. Amen, brother. That is no lie. You hit it right on the nose, sir, per usual. I appreciate you. My family life was challenging, to say the least, but we had strong values. We had very, very strong values. Grandma and granddaddy were pillars in the community. They were pillars in our church. And, we moved around a lot. We moved around a lot for various reasons. I'm not going into those details, but we did. We moved around a lot and we lived with our grandparents, like a lot of us have done. This is no new news in our community or in a lot of communities, even the communities you may not even know of. Back then, people were living with grandma and granddaddy, and it is no secret. But what that brought us was the strength and knowledge because grandma and granddaddy were were faith-based institutions, faith-based institutions. Granddaddy was the head of the deacon board. Grandma was uh she played a huge role in being an usher. And let me tell you, being the oldest grandson had a lot of responsibilities. From Sunday school to leading and back then our church was probably considered one of these mega churches at that time. It was a nice sized church. It can't compare to the mega churches of today, but for then it was considered a mega church, in my opinion. There's times where I had to, yes, sir. Yes, I was. Yes, blessed by the grandparent. Absolutely. Uh, they instilled tenacity. My grandfather can build anything with his hands. He was a mechanic. He was a carpenter. He was a painter. He was a plumber. He was an electrician. He was a gardener. He was an architect. I- my grandfather was amazing with his hands. There's nothing he could not build. I've seen him take a car apart and put it back together. He didn't have a manual. He didn't have a computer. This is what he did. you know, gardening platforms, uh, replumbing entire homes, painting houses, building houses. I mean, the man was amazing. And through him, a lot of us in my family, he instilled in us these core values. Now, I wasn't my I wasn't about to be under the hood of a car getting getting my hands dirty and being a mechanic. That wasn't for me. Even though he wanted me to do that. That was more for like my brother Dan. He was up under the hood and he learned all those mechanic skills, but nah, that wasn't for me. I was in the books. So and Grandy used to get annoyed. He used to call me a little pretty boy. He was like, man, and it was cool, because he knew I was getting those grades, man. But he really wanted me to be up under the hood of the car and learning mechanics. I learned a lot from that. Um, but my brother, he picked it up and ran away with it. He even went to mechanic school like right after high school, and he went to one of those trade schools too. But that wasn't that that wasn't for me. So I was like, nah, granddaddy, nah. I was a ladies' man. I was late, I love the ladies, even young, even when I was very young. I love the ladies, man. That was my vice, you know. Um, it was That's what it was. I've always been surrounded by beautiful women. We have beautiful women in my family. Um, so it was never anything new. The women in my family are gorgeous. So it was nothing new. Um, and being the oldest, I want to know where I got my fashion sense from, man. I got my fashion sense from my grandmother, my grandfather, even my pops, man. My pops, man. He was that guy. He was a bit of a Rolling Stone, but he was that guy, man. He was a fly guy back then. And he loved his cars. Now, I got a love for cars. I get that from him. I get it from my grandfather. Love cars. It was something that was passed down. And you know what? My mom loves cars too. I remember when we were younger, and she bought her first Benz. Oh my God. I used to love that car, man. Never forget it. And I just always said when I was younger, man, I want a Benz. I'm like, my mom got a Benz. One day I'm gonna have a Benz. And I remember uh when I finally was able to get my license before I purchased my first car at an auction, because that's a whole nother story. But through my granddad was like, Even though you have a job, we're not going to allow you to get in debt." He took me to the auction. I paid cash for my first car. That was Granddaddy did that. Helped me and taught me how to drive, and he played a very pivotal role in my life. But I'm jumping around. Back to the church stuff. But when I was younger, man, I led church and I was in the usher board. I was in a choir. I would leave uh church in prayer. Um, so I had that foundation, Bible school, Bible study, uh man, all those things, you know, and I keep getting notifications and I don't know where it's coming from, but I'll figure it out. It'll come back to me. But those all those things together taught me the importance of setting boundaries the value and having the value, knowing the value of emotional intelligence. We didn't know what emotional intelligence was back then, but it's been trending the last couple of years. And those lessons helped me develop my emotional intelligence. Um, it gave me the need for advocacy, and I would take those lessons and put them to work. I would take those lessons and put them to work. There was a time when I didn't believe I would reach the age of 18. We were in the trenches. When I tell you we were in the trenches, man, we were in the trenches. I did not believe I would turn 18. When I turned 18, I said, okay, man, I made it 18. All right. God, let me make it to 21. Made it to 21. Asked, let me make it to age 25. Made it to 25. And I said, man, if I can make it to 30, then it's all downhill from there. I'm good. Like I made it to 30. And you're probably saying to yourself, well, why would you still be have that same mindset? I said I had that same mindset because it was part of my foundation. It's what and who I've become. A lot of times people can change their environment, but they don't really change as a person. You have to continuously have an open mind and grow. And in that growing, you take those lessons and you apply what's applicable, good or bad, right? There were things that loving or death, my pops did that I said, you know what? That's not how I want to be. That's not what I want to do. And I used that negative energy and turned it into a positive, right? And turned it into a positive. I mentioned earlier that I come from a military family. So at right before graduating, I said, you know what? Some things that happened. I've seen people un that. I had been closely visualizing those type of things with friends, and then there was times where those other close friends were getting incarcerated. And I said, you know, I need to do something different. I need to change the course of this energy, not only for myself, but for my brothers and for those who come after me. So I signed up to go into the military. I graduated in June of 93. And 2 weeks later, I was off to boot camp. 2 weeks later, boot camp. Graduated, boot camp. It was just like that. So um when I joined the military, it was an escape. It was a chance to build a different life. The structure, discipline, and camaraderie were transformative. It gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't found before. It took me out of the realm of, hey, you must survive, until it put me in a space where you have purpose. You are a natural leader. Those things from your past that have become ingrained part of your foundation allowed you to be able to lead and be able to focus and guide others. It was really natural. It was a natural thing. Um, I end up serving 17 years total time, um, active and National Guard. 17 total years. It allowed me to continue my journey and focus on personal growth because now I'm not dealing in a traumatic space. I'm dealing in an empowering one. And that growth and development allowed me to learn key skills, lots of characteristics that the military instilled in me. Discipline, discipline. I can't say enough how important it is to have discipline, not only mental discipline, but physical discipline. And you have spiritual discipline. When back then, I don't know what they're doing now, but in boot camp, every Sunday, you were going to church. You were going to church. So I was already a part of that. That foundation was already instilled in me. So that was a natural thing. But to have it on a level where I am an adult and in experiencing it from a military standpoint, it just added more value. And as we used to say, more tools in my toolbox. And that's what this is about. At 50, putting these tools into my toolbox. The teamwork, the leadership, the adaptability, the unwavering commitment to not yourself, but to others. The unwavering commitment to others. I've led troops and you don't really understand the value of leadership until you see it firsthand, where you got all these other personalities who have their own nuances and things that they're going through, family life, finances, spirit, whatever. They have it going through. They're going through it. And you're overseeing them. You don't really understand leadership until you're put into a leadership position. Everybody cannot be a leader. Everybody cannot be a leader. I've seen, and and I keep talking about boot camp, but it's just the natural order of like life. It happens. There's a leader here. They don't lead. They're replaced because we're talking about lives at stake. When you have lives at stake, you can't afford to have the wrong leader in the wrong position. And the great thing about the military is that you may not be a good leader, but they will find use for you. They would take your skill set that you're good at and make you useful. Everybody's useful. Doesn't matter what position. You may not be able to lead, but they have a position for you. Trust me, it's a system that works. We're going to fast forward a little bit and we're going to go back to the military. We're going to talk about after serving, I came back home, went to school for a bit, was able to uh, get a job at the Pentagon, and I was at the Pentagon for a while. As a matter of fact, I was at the Pentagon until 9/11. Now, the Pentagon is huge. It's a huge building, the largest government building in the world. Last time I checked, Pentagon is huge. At the Pentagon, I was a fiber optic technician, which we were redoing the laying the foundation for the new telecom in the Pentagon, and um, it was a great job, great pay. Oh man, we was making a killing, and it was a contract work, so it was a lot of bonuses involved. Um, we were down the hall, my team and I, and I was a lead. My team and I, we were down the hall from where the plane hit. I actually had some guys who were running some tests and doing some tests in a cloth in a fiber closet who got injured when that happened. Um, so some pretty bad injuries, and that was my last day. But get this, I knew something was up. I knew I had it. I had a gut feeling said that something is going on here. I remember being in a closet, and I had the first Sprint phone at the time, and the graphics weren't GUI graphics. It was like this dot matrix stuff, and it was the green screen. It was green and black. You had the green screen and you had the black lettering. And I remember seeing something come across the screen about the first plane that hit, and immediately gut said, "We are under attack." My team and I, these guys weren't they weren't military, and I was like, "Man, this is irregular." I said, "We're under attack." I run to the uh, the contract manager. I'm like, "Look, man, you need to call corporate and tell them that uh, we need to leave out of here because something is going on." I just had a gut feeling, and I told him, I said, um, "We're at the military headquarters of this country." He blew it off. He blew it off, and you know, the rest was history. When it happened, got outside, saw the huge fireball, the heat. I was so close to it, I could feel the heat. The heat hit me, and automatically, my military training started kicking in. I started thinking like biological, chemical. Like, what is this? I see the heat. I saw the mushroom cloud. I saw the fire. It was like right there, and they were telling people to run. What's fascinating is that if you never seen it, go look at pictures of the parking lot. The parking lot there is huge. So we're running, the team and I, the ones that got out and went, we separated and went a certain way. We went different ways. And I'm with my boy, and he was like, "Man, my truck is right here." So we're running, and I'm looking back, and I see the mushroom cloud, fire is just it's crazy. And people were coming through the crosswalks from the tunnels, and people were still walking towards the building, very nonchalant and cavalier. And I'm like, "Hey, we're under attack. Like, you need to leave." And people were just, I don't know. It was weird. But the SWAT guys, they got there, and they got there, and they had the MP5s out, and they were directing people to safety. But to see people still walking towards the building after that, man, was I'll never forget it. And I'm saying analog because I'm telling a story. I jumped in my boy's vehicle. He had an expedition. I'll never forget he had an expedition. And man, this guy, you would have thought that he was driving one of those Bigfoot monster trucks because he was driving over. He was like, man, I got to go get my wife. I got to go get my kids, and they're out in Virginia. And that's all he was talking about. He was like, man, I got to go get him. I got to go get him. He drove over medians. I didn't care. I was with him, man. I was like, dude, let's go. Nobody can talk on the phones because the phone systems were all down. Everybody was trying to make phone calls, and none of the phone calls were going through. So people weren't getting in touch with their loved ones. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And we were able to, with this fast driving and speeding, we were in Virginia like that. It was a blink of an eye. And this is time is wow, it's 40 minutes already. We were in Virginia in a blink of an eye. We stopped. We stopped at a 7-Eleven, and we were full of sweat. We had, we had shared a few tears, or, and we were emotional because we were under attack. We go into 7-Eleven, and all the people, it was crowded because everybody was watching the monitors because the monitors were showing the different incidents that had just occurred. And people were looking at us and like, hey, what's going on with you guys? And I'm like, man, I'm like, man, we're under attack. And I said, something just hit the Pentagon. We just came from there. And people were just in disbelief. The looks on their faces was, how can I put it? Yeah. Since they like sheeple. And, my boy and I, after we left out of there, I was like, he was like, man, that was weird. And I'm like, yeah, that was weird, bro. I was like, man, people asleep. They don't know what's going on. He was like, man, evidently they don't. I was like, dude, if this crisis or whatever was happening is larger than what we're seeing right now, we're in trouble. He was like, yeah, bro, we need to go get my wife and kids. So we book it. He's able to grab the kid, and then he picked up his wife, and traffic was horrendous. He was driving on the shoulder. Everybody was in traffic. This guy was like, I'm getting to a safe place, which is home, and I didn't care what it took. So he drove on his shoulder. He drove over medians. He did whatever he could to get to a safe location, which was his house. And I was still with him. So when we got to the house, we was watching the news. We were rehashing everything that happened and just thinking about the ordeal of the day and things that had just occurred. And the chaos, the uncertainty, the sheer scale of tragedy, it undeniably shaped my perspective on life and service. Undeniably shaped it. At that point, like many other points, I felt like I needed to be a hero. I don't know where that comes from. Maybe it comes from, it's ingrained from being a part of a military family, man, but I always felt like I had to be the hero. Fast forward to my military service again. Oh, but wait, before that, there were hours that went by, and it was late that night that communication would pick back up. And I was able to communicate with my mom and the family and let everybody know I was good. So, but fast forward. After that, that opened the door to a lot of military missions, right? A lot of military missions. And I was at the end of my first contract, like I was 2 weeks out, 2 weeks out from my first contract. And I got put in a position because my military job was critical. I got put into what is called stop loss. That means I couldn't get out. And that happened more than one occasion. It happened a few times. But I was compensated for it at the end, well compensated for it. But getting out wasn't happening because your job, it was like a backdoor draft. Your job is critical. You don't have a lot of people with this particular skill set. We need you. You can't get out. Basically, that's what it was, a backdoor draft called stop loss. And I served in Afghanistan and Iraq. Both were equally intense. They were combat missions. Uh, During those times, I focused on the challenges and lessons that were learned. Those experiences pushed me to my limits. Being a convoy commander, being a squad leader, just being a leader, period, pushed me to my limits. I had to dig deep and find that inner strength that I didn't even know I possessed because we didn't stay on a fob. We didn't stay on base behind a desk. We were on mission. We were on mission 5 to sometimes 6 days a week, where we're basically in those communities with the people. We would go back to refit with gas, ammo, food, recharge, sleep, all those things. And then we're back out again. That's what we did. And I had to pull from a place that I didn't even know really existed. I'd never been in war before. I didn't know that every time I step outside this gate that these people wanted to, you know, and not everyone. I'm not going to say that. Not everyone. But they we had enemies. And being a convoy commander, my number one focus was to make sure that everybody got back safely. Everybody got back safely. Iraq hit us so hard. We lost our first body the third day that we were there. And that was eye opening. That let us know that, hey, this is the real deal, right? This is the real deal. Third day there. And I'll never forget it. Never. My time in the military actually ended prematurely. I probably would have stayed in 30 plus years because I loved it so much. I did 17 because I got actually on that last mission. Um, I suffered an injury and I was semi paralyzed. And a military career ended. It was premature due to the combat injury that I sustained in Iraq. This led to my medical discharge and transitioned into being what I am today, a disabled veteran. 100%. If you didn't know that, I'm a disabled veteran. This was a challenging period requiring significant adaptation and resilience. Had a new baby from my then wife at the time, brand new newborn. I remember first time seeing her on a computer screen. It was 8 months in before I could see her in person. And when I saw her, she recognized my voice immediately and she reached out for me. And I never forget it. And I bawled like oh man, that was so emotional seeing her for the first time and she reached out to me and I came home I was partially paralyzed. I transitioned from being in a wheelchair to using a walker to a cane to walking without any assistance. I did that over a course of 3 years being in the Wounded Warrior program. When I first came home, I was at Walter Reed, and then from Walter Reed, they transferred me to Fort Meade. And the staff and the team at those Wounded Warrior programs, they saved a lot of lives. Not only did soldiers who've been in combat, they saved them their mental, which is important, the mental aspect. Then the physical recovery, and then to build you back up from within so you can go back out here and do whatever you're going to do on the next level or the next phase, I should say. Those doctors, nurses, therapists, they deserve all of the accolades, all of the accolades. It's unfortunate that they don't get enough credit. They deserve it. They deserve all of the credit. In my healing, I have had, in my healing, I've had my left side of my jaw redone, cosmetic surgery, all titanium. I've had my intestines reworked and put back in place. I've had a knee replacement and I've had back surgery. Those are some of the major ones. I'm not going to go into some of the other ones, but I've had a lot of surgeries and all part of my recovery. But the transitions and challenges from military life to civilian life and focusing on the physical and emotional aspects with a newborn, with a then wife who didn't understand military life. I had to focus on my physical because I wasn't the same person. I didn't have the same strength. I was not the person she had married when I came back. I wasn't the same person. I've lost a huge amount of my physicality and emotional aspects. I had what I had the 100-mile stare. I had the 100-mile stare, and I had PTSD really bad. I had PTSD really bad. I remember um, we were at a restaurant, and there was a lot of it was a lot going on, and there was a construction site right outside the restaurant, and something dropped at the restaurant. I mean, not at the restaurant. Something dropped at the construction site. Maybe one of the beams or something. It was loud, and it sounded like an explosion. And I went into full PTSD mode. I didn't know where I was at. I was like talking to people who weren't there. I was telling people to get down. She was looking at me. She was crying. She didn't know what was going on. But it was a PTSD moment. It was a trigger. And I had thought I was back in Iraq, and I was exposed to the IEDs were just it was everyday life. If you don't know what IED is, it's improvised explosive device. It was common all day, every day. Explosions, bombs. It was the main mechanism of attack for us. Um, all day, every day. It was and it was a trigger, and I lost it temporarily. I didn't know where I was at. She was able to bring me back, but it happened. So PTSD is real. Those triggers were real at that time. But transitioning was very, very hard. The experience taught me the importance of patience, self compassion, advocacy, advocacy for oneself and others. Despite the challenges, I channeled my own experiences into entrepreneurship. I remember building my first business. Um, it was early on. It was right before, right after I had came back home from boot camp. Had a grand idea, and it just kind of like happened. It was one of those businesses that just kind of happened. Like, hey, you're good at this. Then it was, and it just blew up from there. Um, I started a business called Old to New Car Care. It was my first business was a detail company, mobile detail company back then. So, uh, you know, uh, I was at the beginning of this new business space that was transforming. And I remember one of my close friends that I grew up with. Uh, Shout out to Chad. Chad was engaged to a radio personality, uh, a high level radio personality host, radio show host at PGC. Well, I'm not going to talk about names. Yeah, I don't get into that. I'm not going to talk about names. But he was engaged to her, and she heard of my service. And she had a Benz, man, beautiful Benz coupe. And I took care of her Benz, and then the main host of the show was like, "Hey, man, you do good work," and everybody wanted me to do their cars. So I got an invitation to go out to his house, do his cars, do his wife's cars. It was cool, man. Business was moving. The thing about having a detailed business or a business that depends on having good customer relations and good customer service. If you're a perfectionist and your team don't see things the way you see things, the business is going to fail. The people that you have underneath you need to be on your same level or higher when it comes to detail, when it comes to handling customers, and when it comes to providing that service. If they're not, and they're lacking, and it shows, you as a perfectionist are going to go keep you're going to constantly keep going back over their work, which is in business. Time is money. Time is money, and you don't have the time. And then if you don't have it, you're not making no money. So that was a problem. And the business started out well, but as it started to grow, I it divulged. I couldn't. I had to let it go. So that was my first business. But as today, as it stands, um, I have right now the podcast is legitimate business LLC. I have the merch store, and I have a growing IT company that I'm working on getting vetted by the Gov to receive potential government contracts or contracts, period. So, going through that process. I've been going through that process for some time, but I just submitted the last piece of paperwork that they needed for the last piece of vetting. So hopefully we get past that and we're on to the races. So I've been working on that. And I'm finishing my master's. I'm finishing my master's. I just uh, started started school a few weeks ago, and I'm excited about that. Get this semester out the way, 5 semesters to go. So that's what keeps me busy, along with family, along with uh, just my mental, trying to provide clarity and have the ability to assist others and change one person's life. It's all about changing one person's life. It's been a roller coaster, but I have to say it's been incredibly rewarding. It really has. A lot of people take me, and I used to hear it all the time, man. People take me for how my outside exterior looked. Oh, there's nothing wrong with him. He doesn't have scars. He has a perfect life. He dresses well. He does all these things. No, that's just the outside. And I used to get judged so quickly and so often because of the way I dressed. I've always liked fashion. I love fashion. I come from a family that loved fashion. It was something that was instilled in me. Listen, my grandparents, man, my grandfather, even though he would get up under that hood, he is nailed. Listen, that dude was dressed to the nines, man. You couldn't tell him anything on Sunday morning. His hats, cologne, suits. Man, my grandfather had a million suits. And dress you like listen, man. I come from a family that enjoyed fashion, but they understood that looking good is a representation of not only you, but it's a representation of those behind you, those around you. And I'm talking about family. It's a representation and it instilled a certain level of confidence. I've always had a certain level of confidence, high confidence, and not a certain level. This podcast is a testament to my journey, the final boss. As I reflect on all of my experiences to date, my personal growth, my connection with my supporters, my connection with those, my loved ones, I am doing this, this embodiment is therapeutic. But at the same time, I want to touch and reach an audience and be able to change someone's life, change someone's perspective, give someone a different way of seeing things or having uh, insight. I've seen too many podcasts where they are either about celebrities, current events, or some foolishness from off of TV. I wanted to do something different, right? Those things are too easy. Everybody's doing it. Everybody is doing those particular lanes of entertainment and media when it comes to podcasting. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to offer something that gives you discernment or aha moments, or I just learned something from them. I learn something from my guests all the time. Man, I got sheets of notes that I'm always taking because I don't have all the answers. I never proclaimed to have all the answers. I know where to find answers, but I really appreciate when somebody is able to deliver on a aspect and thought that is fact, not opinion, but fact. This is why I offer at the end of my podcast, I offer uh, resources, references, scholarly material. So as I'm dropping these breadcrumbs and these cookies, or I'm leading you to the water, and you're taking a sip, you're like, hmm, I like this water. You keep drinking the water because I want you to keep coming back to drink the water because I'm going to provide you with information that I believe you can take into your everyday life and it be of help or assistance. My online store and IT company represent different facets of my entrepreneurial journey. The online store was easy. I've done merch before. I did really well with that merch with that particular brand. I had a record label. I had a record label, man, for many years. I had a record label for many years. Met some amazing artists. Had amazing artists on my roster. Um, it was a crazy movement. Did many concerts, lots of shows. Oh man, studio life, traveling, putting on my own tour. It was a lot, and I mean, it was a lot. Um, it was, but I learned a lot of lessons about that business and that space. And that's a mean business. That is a very, very mean business. A lot of hyenas in that business. And if you know what a hyena is, listen, a lot of those people, sorry, in that business are hyenas. They're vultures and hyenas. That's what they are. So you need to have a strong team behind you, but you need a lot of capital. That business, you need a lot of capital. I think nowadays, in order for you to really be successful or get somewhere in the music industry, you need to have at least 250K, at least 250K, because a huge part of the business is marketing. And you don't know marketing until you get into the music industry. It it's it's the business. It is the business. And nowadays, these record labels aren't even really selling music anymore. What they're selling is data. It's data. It's about uh user listening habits, controls, those mechanisms, characteristics. It's data, man. Data for real. That's what it's about. Um my IT company, if you don't know, like I have an IT background, and being a being a veteran, it only made sense that I'm an entrepreneur, right? I have a degree in business. My master's is in international business. So it only made sense to have an IT company that I'm familiar with, and I understand business as a whole. So I'm working and growing that as we speak. Now it's been an arduous process, but it's coming along, and I'm proud of it. And most importantly, is we're in good standing. If you don't have, you don't know what owning a business is until you have to keep it in good standing. And being a corporation, there are a lot of taxes you have to pay. Franchise tax, all types of taxes, right? And my my IT company is a corporation. It's an S corp. The Final Boss Podcast is an LLC, and Saturn Digital Networks Development Corporation is filed under an S corporation. So there you have it. Entrepreneurship has taught me the importance of being a risk taker, but I learned that growing up in the environment I was in. Adaptability, also growing up in the environment I was in. Perseverance, also learned from the environment I was in. It also taught me the importance of having a strong team, and the value of never giving up. Also learned from the environment I grew up. The neighborhood, my friends, we were a little crew or whatever you want to call it. We were tight. We were very tight. To this day, most of us are still tight. Um, Great relationship. At this point, they're family. You know, like Sensei had said earlier, you always choose your family, but not your relatives. Always choose your family, but not your relatives. It's important to understand that and be able to differentiate who's family and who's a relative, right? Not all relatives are family, and not all family. You get the point. But here we are, just turning 50, just turning 50, man. Where a time where I didn't believe I would make it to 30. Growing up didn't know that because of what was happening to you and the people around you, didn't know you would make it to 18. Phew, man, 18, 21. Phew, man, 21. Thank you, God. Thank you. 21. Man, phew, 25. And then you get to a point at 30. And I think I got married in my early 30s. I waited. Didn't have any kids. Waited and until, you know, but I was in my early 30s, married and first child. But 50 is a significant milestone. My family is notoriously known for making it to their 90s or their hundreds. Like the family's pretty stubborn. They just won't die. They don't. I used to say my grandfather, he was too stubborn to death. I love him to death, man. And I know I'm laughing about it, man. Bless his soul. But I used to I'm like, he's just too stubborn. He's not going anywhere. I used to say that all the time. He's too stubborn to go anywhere. He's not going anywhere. But yeah, man, we have longevity. But to say that with me not knowing that I may make it to my 90s or 100s, I have more years behind me than I have possibly in front of me. More years behind me than possibly in front of me. I'm using this time as a reflection because I'm here. Half a decade. No, half a century. I'm sorry. Half a century. Half a century. I'm full of so much gratitude, looking towards the future. I am incredibly proud of how far I've come, considering where I started. And everybody has their own unique story. Everyone has their own unique story, but you don't know what a person's been through until they tell you. Now, granted, there was a lot of gray area of things that I'm just not going to talk about on social media, especially on my podcast platform. But I'm extremely proud to be here at 50. I've traveled the world. I've done a lot of things. I've done a lot of things I'm proud of. I've done a lot of things that I'm not so proud of. Um, I'm committed. I'm committed to seeing everything I'm involved in right now on this day as I turn 50 years old, as I am now 50. I'm committed to seeing it through. I'm committed to seeing these things become successful. I'm committed to continuing to grow. I'm committed to growing my businesses. I'm committed to supporting veterans. I'm committed to supporting my loved ones and giving back to the community, advocating for improved veteran care, and supporting others in the things that they're passionate about. My Uncle Mullah is a pillar in the Alzheimer's community. One of my goals for this year is to support her in that and help her be a stronger pillar in that space. And she don't need no help. She don't. But I want to help her. So go check her out, man. She was on she was on the show a few episodes ago, and she went all in on Alzheimer's. All in. Great information. I learned a lot from her on that particular episode. And I'm looking forward to having her back very soon. My journey has not been easy, but it's mine. Just like your journey has not been easy for you, but it's yours. A lot of us, more than more than half of our community, have been going through this life from a place of trauma, from a place of trauma. But the great thing is, these aren't excuses, these are truths. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. I wouldn't trade none of those experiences or anything that I was involved in or experienced for anything. I wouldn't trade in my military career. I wouldn't trade in my child for any, because it made me who I am today. It made me to be resilient. It gave me the skill to be able to see things in layers, be able to see the not only the pros and cons, but the what ifs, the action reaction. I have the ability to see all of those things, and that's a blessing. That is a blessing. I thank each and every last one of you for being a part of this special edition of the Final Boss podcast. As I just turned 50, I appreciate you for tuning in, being a part of this story, being a part of my movement or the movement, because it's bigger than me. It's bigger than me. I'm just a messenger. I'm just a messenger. Hopefully, we get to a point where the final boss continues past me, right? That's a goal. This has been deeply personal, and it's been a deeply personal reflection for me to share my story, my struggles, my triumphs. It has all been catalytic. And I hope it resonates with you. I really hope it resonates with you. I thank you for listening. I thank you for being a part of this early 50th celebration. And I would not be remiss if I didn't say, hey, go like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Go like, share, and subscribe to all of our social media. Go get you some merch. It's bigger than me. It's a movement. You're fighting the final boss. Final boss is internal. It's that internal battle that you have within yourself. That's the real final boss. Battling the war within. And it is a war. You have to make decisions and fight that final boss that's within. That's what it's about. I thank you for being a part of this journey. I'm looking forward to whatever God has for me from this point forward. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to embrace it and I'm going to make it successful. I believe and I'm passionate about those statements right there. So y'all have a it's morning. Y'all have a great morning. Have a great day. And I'm looking forward to talking with you again on the next episode, which will be this Sunday at 9 p.m. And then on Tuesday with the sensei. And then on Thursday with my guest. Remember, stay balanced, stay equal, stay smart. I'm the Final Boss. This is the Final Boss Podcast. And thank you for tuning in. Have a great one.